Good morning. Buenos dias. All right, it is live. We have people watching. Buenos dias. Uno momento. I am going to start taking, I know I'm speaking Spanish, but I'm going to start taking Italian lessons. Very excited about that. I'm well aware that you're listening and there's no one on the video yet. Here I come. Let's move this puppy out of the way and put this down on the floor. There we go. I think we're good. Hey, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hey, Danielle, you can hear me. Oh, there's a delay. I always forget about this delay. All right, I got on my most comfortable pants. And I'm still working on that first cup of coffee. So, good morning. These are my most comfortable pants. Yes. So, morning moves. Just going to get started here. But I was reading a really cool article about surge capacity in people, not electronics, not electronically, but apparently we have this surge capacity. Come onto your hands and knees. And I have definitely been tapped into my surge capacity for a really long time, as many of us have, if not all of us. Probably maybe there's some kids that aren't tapped into. I'd like, oh, we should check that out. Let's check the research on surge capacity in children. All right, sit back to child's pose. Now listen, if you're in child's pose like this and this doesn't feel good in your knees, come back up, like meaning the flexion is too deep and it doesn't feel good. Come back up and walk your hands forward. Really awkward, right? Hands and knees. And then send your seat back and your chest down. Now you're going to feel a deeper stretch in the shoulders. In fact, you might want to do this anyway. Um, Deeper stretch in your shoulders, and there's less flexion in the knees, right? So I kind of like that for the shoulders. And then if the flexion in the knees is okay for you, also keep the hands pressed into the mat as you move your seat back so that you do get the stretch through the shoulders and the side waist, especially. And it's really the back side waist, back of the rib cage down towards the sacrum. So you feel it up into the armpits and like a little V down to your tailbone. And you breathe. So surge capacity is just what it sounds like when you have a surge of energy, when you mobilize in an emergency situation. Now, come forward to hands and knees. Curl your toes under, take a back bend in your chest, and lift your chin slightly. And on your exhale, round your spine, take your chin into your chest. So we're moving in cat-cow. Now you might have adjusted your knees just beneath your hips and your wrists just in front of your shoulders, and you're flexing and extending through the curves of your spine. Your inhale takes your chest forward and your tailbone up. Your exhale rounds your upper chest, takes your chin in and drops the tailbone down. When you inhale, let there be a slight relaxation around your abdomen as you come into this back bend. And when you exhale, pull the navel up into the spine and engage those lower abdominal muscles between the hip points and the pubic bone. Let's do that one more time. Inhale. And exhale. So you can imagine if there's an emergency situation, like maybe a hurricane is approaching, or there's a fire, inhale, come into a neutral spine. Move your wrists just a little bit further forward in front of your shoulders. Curl your toes under. Let's lift up into downward facing dog. And in this down dog, let's take the feet wide as your mat, so the outer edges of your feet are at least in touch with the mat. Good. And take a look back at the second and third toes. I love this cue from the Iyengar tradition. Second and third toes are pointing forward. That kind of lines the center of the foot up and the feet parallel. And now bend the knees slightly, lift the sit bones and the tailbone up a little higher, like you're trying to tilt. You actually are tilting the pelvis anteriorly forward and lifting the tailbone up behind you. Then sink the heels towards the floor. And my runner and bicycle people out there just went, oh, wow, my calves. And you're breathing. So there's these emergency situations to happen, and then we surge. We get a surge of energy, adrenaline, mentality. Stay here with the breath, chest moving towards the space between the thighs. Push into the inner edges of the hands, lift the inner arches of the palms. Good. Now, walk your feet back together again, heels behind the widest part of your feet. Nice. And let the knees bend just a little bit. So slight flexion in the knee, and then try to firm the thighs, the fronts of the thighs towards the backs of the thighs. Good. Next time you happen to breathe in, come forward to plank pose. And as you exhale, lower your knees and send your seat towards your heels again. Take whichever one of those two child's poses that you like. So all of the things kick in, right, in that emergency response. We have this surge and this capacity to respond to the situation. And then what happens is that situation passes, right? And we become more in recovery mode, right? So maybe we are rebuilding. Let's think of it that way. We rebuild. Now come forward to hands and knees. Curl your toes under, lift your hips, press back to downward facing dog. And let's walk the hands and feet towards each other so they meet up together in the middle of your mat. And now let's take the feet, heel toe them a little wider than hip distance so they're inside the long edges of your mat. Those second and third toes are pointed forward, right? And you have the heels, that's another clue, behind the widest part of your feet. Let's push into the feet and lift the sit bones up again. Grab hold of either elbow with opposite hands. So you're in ragdoll here. You can let the shoulders drop towards the floor. The elbows drop towards the floor. Push into those heels and lift the sit bones. Push the fronts of the thighs towards the backs of your thighs and breathe. Move the weight towards the front of your feet and then towards the heels. Find center, push into the whole sole of your foot, strengthen the thighs, fronts of the thighs. Good, and then let's relax, release the grip of the elbows, heel toe your feet back together. So the big toes are touching, big toe mounds are touching, and the second and third toes pointed forward, heels behind that. Nice, and on your inhale, long spine, come all the way up. Push into your feet. All right, and we'll pause in Tadasana, mountain pose. Okay, so we have this capacity to respond to an emergency situation and then to recover and rebuild, right? But now let's say that, just say, propose, maybe somehow you find yourself in a position where the situation continues. It doesn't end. There's no hurricane goes over and moves on, dissipates, right? It just stays. It just sits there and sits there and sits there for days and weeks and months. Inhale, lift your arms up, hook your thumbs at the top, and as you exhale, reach out and over towards your right. Press down through both feet. We're doing a little side stretch through the side waist. Make sure that this right side waist, the side that's flexed, bent, is also lengthening, and you're pushing into both feet. And then let's grip the thighs in. So strengthen those thigh muscles, activate them, push into your feet, reach into your fingertips. Good. On your next inhale, come back to center. And as you exhale, reach out and over towards your left. Don't worry about the hook of your thumbs yet. Keep that left sideways now, lengthening. And reach out and over. Press into both feet. Thighs are nice and strong here. Good. One more breath in. Come back to center and exhale, lower your arms. Can you remember which thumb you had hooked in front? That's the hard part. That's our challenge this morning. Inhale, lift your arms back up. So now take the opposite hook of the thumb. So it should feel kind of awkward. Breathe in here. And exhale, take it out and over towards your right. So I don't know. I can't imagine anything that would make you feel like you're in sort of an emergency situation or response mode for an extended period of time. Imagine there's a think cloud over my head right now, and there's a word in it. It starts with a P. Inhale, come back up to center. Exhale, reach back out and over to the left. Good. Yeah, exactly. So you got this situation that goes on and on and on, and your surge capacity has been on the entire time, right? Come back to center, lower your arms. So you've been in this response mode for this whole time without a relief, without a stopping of it, without a end point, and without an end point inside. What does this do to your nervous system? Take your hands behind you, interlace your fingers. All right, I'd like you to start with the elbows and the backs of your arms lifted. Elbows bent, backs of your arms lifted. So it creates a slight little bit of hunching in the front of the chest or the back body. Press your palms together. So bending the elbows allows you to press your palms together. All right. Now, as soon as you start to extend at the elbows, right, straighten the elbows, the hands might stretch away from each other. Okay. So I'd like the elbows to be bent enough that the palms stay stuck together, and lift the front part of your chest, the sternum. And as you exhale, fold maybe just halfway. So come back up. And when you fold, I want you to fold from your pelvis. Your spine will follow, right? Your spine is rooted in the back of your pelvis. So take the pelvis forward and your spine will follow, as opposed to taking the spine forward and the pelvis following. This is going to keep a nice preventative measure for the low back, especially. All right, so elbows are lifted, bent if you need to keep the hands together. And we're folding forward from the pelvis, right? Lifting the arms up towards the ceiling. You might only come halfway down, which is fine. And you might be able to keep the pelvis tilting forward. But as soon as the back tries to lead, then lift back up. As soon as the hands move away from each other, bend the elbows and press the palms back together. Lift from the upper arms as opposed to the knuckles. And so we're taking everything from the center outward. Think of it that way. We're taking everything from the most proximal parts of our limbs, the parts of our limbs that are closest to their root in our body, and then outward. Good. So what this does to our nervous system, release your hands down to the floor. Walk them forward so they're about one of your torso lengths forward. So the wrists are just underneath the shoulders. Press the thumbs and fingertips into the floor. Breathe in here. And as you exhale, squeeze your navel to your spine. Move your shoulders away from your ears. Lengthen through the top of your head. One more breath in here like that. And out. Good. And the next time you inhale, lift back up. And exhale, Tadasana, mountain pose. So what happens? To our nervous system, take your hands to your hips. Take a little bit baby step forward with your right foot and a big half step back with your left foot. Keep them on hip distance apart. That back heel, the left heel might have turned in slightly, so you can plant it into your mat. Hands are on your hips. Breathe in here. And on your exhale, elbows are squeezed back. You're leaning forward about halfway, lining your torso up with the floor, and breathe. Good. Keep your elbows lifted. Press into the big toe mound of that right foot, the front foot. One more breath in and out. Now inhale, come up. Good. And we're going to switch to the other side. So bring your feet parallel. Hands are still on your hips. And now switch it around. Take that left foot, turn it out towards the back, and the right foot, turn it in. And you might need to adjust a little bit. I know I do. So my hips are facing forward and the feet are hip distance apart. Hands on the hips, elbows back, sternum lifts. Oh, it's raining. Breathe in. It's raining here in New York. And exhale, tilt from the pelvis. The spine will follow. Tilt it so that it's parallel to the floor. That's it. Press into the big toe mound of that left foot. Breathe in the front foot. And breathe out. Lengthen. Inhale, come back up. And exhale, parallel the feet. So turn to face the long edge of your mat. Hands on the hips. Sternum lifts. Breathe in. On your exhale, fold forward. Tilt at the pelvis, right? Pelvis goes, spine follows. Drop the hands down to your ankles or to the inside of the feet or even forward onto the floor. Let your head hang down. Okay, a little more weight towards the front of the feet. Lift your sit bones. Press the fronts of your thighs towards the backs of your thighs. And that's basically lifting the kneecaps and engaging your quadriceps. So we start to feel fatigue, exhaustion, overload, and we lose our ability to bounce back. We have less resilience when we are constantly in that response mode, that fight or flight mode. Bend the knees, lift all the way up, and step your feet together. Mountain pose. And breathe. So what can we do to help ourselves not just survive, but to live in a way that's a little bit more easeful and a little bit more in a sense of thriving rather than surviving, right? What can we do besides meditate? Because that's at 6:35. This yoga practice, right? We can do practices that give us a way to come onto your hands and knees, give us a way to build strength, release tensions, right? Step your right foot forward between your hands and curl your left toes under and straighten the back knee. Lift it off the mat. Good. Fingertips and thumb tips are on the mat. You're in low lunge. Breathe in here and breathe out. All right, now what I want you to do is strengthen that left thigh in the back. So let that left hip lift a little bit. Maybe the right hip drops down just a slight bit. And let's really let the legs stretch away from each other and lengthen through the top crown of your head. Breathe in and out. Nice. Now lower your right knee down to the mat. If you need to, pat it. Uncurl the toes. Hook your thumbs. Inhale, lift your arms up to frame your head. And as you exhale, drop the hips forward and down, stretching that front hip flexor. And we also need to do things that are more restorative. So we're making deposits in our resilience bank. Breathe in here. And exhale, lower your hands down to the floor. Let's move that right knee back to meet the left. And do a brief downward facing dog. Curl the toes under, lift your hips up and back. Pause in down dog. Full breath in. And exhale, take, like I said, brief knees back to the mat. Now step your left foot forward between your hands. Good. Curl your right toes under. Lift the back knee off the mat. Stay up on the tips of your thumbs and fingers. Good. Keep that left knee coming over the ankle. Stretch that right thigh behind you, but lift it slightly so it's not dropping into the floor. Lift that up. Lengthen through the top of your head. And be steady. So we need to do things to clear our mind, to tap into our quiet space, and practice our breath under these conditions. So when we move off of our mat, drop your right knee back down to the mat, uncurl the toes, hook the thumbs in front. Maybe you remember the opposite hook. Lift the arms up to frame your head, breathe in. And on your exhale, drop your hips forward and down, stretching that right hip flexor. Full breath in. Full breath out. Lift your chin slightly. One more breath. And exhale, lower your hands to the floor. Take your left knee back to meet the right. Let's take it into downward facing dog. Briefly lift the hips. Inhale forward to plank pose. And exhale, lower knees and hips back to child's pose, or maybe that half child's pose that I showed at the beginning. So doing things like child's pose, legs up the wall, resting on your back with the soles of your feet together, your knees wide. So these kind of typical restorative postures so that you have an aware rest. You haven't just passed out. And if you can do it just about 3 to 5 minutes a day, you'll get really good at it because it's not easy to do this on the regs. You'll get really good at the rest part. I'm not really good at the rest part. And you'll start to feel better in this ongoing surge capacity situation. Now, what I'd like you to do, we're going to do legs up the wall. What I'd like you to do is come over to a wall if you can. If you don't have a wall, then you're just going to lay on your back, okay? But if you can find a wall or a chair, or even you can put your legs up onto the seat of a sofa or a chair, right? If you're at the wall, the easiest and most graceful way to do this is sit with one hip against the wall, drop to the floor, and swing the legs up the wall and lay on your back. Okay? And you can put your heels into the wall, and if you have really tight hamstrings, or short hamstrings, as I like to say, and you've got your legs really against the wall, you're going to feel your hips lifting slightly and the rounding in your lumbar spine, which we don't want. So if you need to, you either place a blanket and take a blanket, lift your hips and drop a blanket underneath the pelvis, right? Or, and that feels nice regardless, or you can move further away from the wall. Then press into your elbows, lift your upper chest, drop your shoulder blades onto the floor, and let your arms be about 45 degrees from your body with the palms facing up. And relax the muscles and tissues around your eyes. This posture for 3 to 5 minutes a day. Now, having said that, don't start going into panic mode that you have a committed time frame for this and I've almost reached my limit. So you don't have to worry. I'm not going to keep you here for 5 minutes, not even 3, just 60 seconds. Listen to your breath. Let the skin of your forehead relax. Slow down the speed of the thoughts in your mind and let them rest and release with each exhale. And so you can stay here, right, for 3 to 5 minutes. And if you can't stay here this morning, for whatever reason, before you get up here, promise yourself that you'll do something like this. Lay with your legs up the wall, take a warm bath, sip a cup of tea by a window without your computer or your phone, just something for 3 to 5 minutes, at least once a day, to take care of yourself. Just make that promise right now. And then once you've completed that promise, let your feet come down to the wall, slide down the wall, bending your knees, roll over to one side, and press yourself up to sit. And pause for a moment. Thank you so much for coming to join us this morning on the tube. And we'll be back later on Soul Collective. Soul Collective is moving platforms starting a week from Monday. Very excited about it. Lots of information will be coming to your inbox, so keep an eye out, please. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me either by email, rebecca@soulyoga.com, or on my cell. Some of you have that. If you're looking for it, send me an email. I'm happy to send it out to you. And yeah. Oh, and I'm also on what's it called? Instagram. Yeah, I'm on Instagram @Soul Yoga. Okay. Have a great day. Take care.